a secret order, a shocking transfer of power. And according to whispers echoing through palace corridors, King Charles may have just made the most explosive decision of his entire reign. Because if this extraordinary move means what many royal insiders believe it means, then the future of the monarchy is arriving much faster than anyone and at the center of it all stands Catherine, Princess of Wales, holding the keys to one of the most powerful symbols in British history. Something dramatic appears to have unfolded behind the guarded walls of Buckingham Palace, and the timing has royal watchers asking questions that nobody seemed ready to ask just months ago. King Charles, a monarch whose health has remained under intense public scrutiny since his cancer diagnosis, has reportedly signed an order that changes everything about how people view Catherine's position inside the royal hierarchy. Not a ceremonial gesture, not a symbolic ribbon-cutting duty, something much bigger, something that reaches directly into the heart of royal authority itself. Suddenly, Catherine is being associated with responsibility over the crown jewels, the priceless collection that represents centuries of monarchy, power, legitimacy, and continuity. And when a king dealing with serious health concerns begins transferring responsibilities connected to the very symbols of the crown, people naturally begin wondering what comes next. The first clue in this growing mystery is not the jewels themselves, it is Charles. For months, the palace has attempted to project stability, continuity, and confidence. Yet behind every carefully managed appearance sits an unavoidable reality. The king continues undergoing treatment. Every appearance is analyzed, every public engagement becomes a source of speculation. Every photograph generates is he stronger? Is he weaker? Is he preparing for the future? And perhaps most importantly, what preparations are already taking place behind closed doors that the public is only beginning to notice? That is where the story becomes impossible to ignore, because this reported transfer does not stand alone. It joins a growing pattern that many royal observers have been quietly connecting for months. Catherine has been moving steadily toward the center of royal power, not gradually, not subtly, almost deliberately, piece by piece, event by event, appearance by appearance. The pattern is becoming harder to dismiss as coincidence. Consider what has happened recently. Catherine has appeared at increasingly important state occasions. She has worn historically significant jewels that were once closely associated with queens. She has been elevated into roles carrying greater institutional importance. She has been presented to the public not merely as the wife of the future king, but as a central pillar of the monarchy's future. Every appearance seems to carry a message. Every decision seems designed to communicate readiness. And in the world of royalty, nothing is accidental. That is the rule experienced royal watchers repeat over and over again. Nothing is accidental. When Catherine appeared wearing historic pieces from the royal collection that had remained unseen for years, people noticed. When she took on increasingly prominent responsibilities, people noticed. When palace insiders began speaking about continuity, transition, and preparation, people noticed. But when whispers emerged that she had effectively been entrusted with guardianship over the monarchy's most important treasures, the conversation changed completely. Because the crown jewels are not simply expensive objects locked behind glass, they are symbols, living symbols. The imperial state crown, the saint, Edward's crown. Historic scepters, orbs, diamonds, sapphires, and priceless regalia. They represent the survival of the institution itself. Empires rose and fell around them. Wars erupted and ended around them. Generations of monarchs came and went while these objects remain. Whoever is trusted with their future is trusted with something far greater than gemstones. And that trust raises a question nobody can avoid. Why Catherine? Why now? Why would such a significant responsibility arrive at this particular moment? Some insiders believe the answer is obvious. Charles is thinking ahead, far ahead, further ahead than the public realizes. They point to a growing series of actions that suggest preparation rather than reaction. They argue that William and Catherine are no longer being prepared for a distant future. They are being prepared for a future that may arrive sooner than expected. The evidence, they say, is hiding in plain sight. Every major state banquet, every expanded role, every symbolic appearance, every carefully selected jewel, every increased responsibility. Each individual event may appear small on its own, but together they form a picture that becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. And Catherine's own journey makes the story even more remarkable. Just a few years ago, she faced one of the most difficult periods of her life. Her own health struggles created uncertainty and concern across the world. For months, speculation surrounded her absence. Rumors spread endlessly. Questions multiplied. Yet when she returned with determination, not cautiously, not hesitantly. She returned returned as someone seemingly transformed by adversity. That transformation did not go unnoticed inside palace circles. Observers began describing her differently, no longer simply a future queen, no longer simply a popular royal figure. Increasingly, she was described as an institution in her own right, someone capable of carrying enormous responsibility, someone capable of representing continuity during uncertain times. And uncertainty is exactly what appears to be driving events now, because the palace's silence may be the loudest clue of all. When ordinary royal announcements happen, explanations usually follow. Briefings appear, sources speak, context is provided. Yet with this growing discussion surrounding Catherine's expanded responsibilities, explanations seem unusually limited. The silence itself fuels speculation, and in royal history, silence has often spoken louder than words. As a result, whispers continue spreading through royal circles. Some believe Charles is simply ensuring stability. Others believe he is actively accelerating preparations for a transition. Some even wonder whether the monarchy has quietly entered a new chapter without formally announcing it. Nobody outside the palace knows for certain, but what cannot be denied is that Catherine stands closer to the center of royal authority than ever before. She has become the face of continuity, the face of stability, the face of the monarchy's future. And perhaps that is the most important clue of all, because history rarely announces itself when it begins. It unfolds quietly, a signature on a document, a responsibility transferred, a symbolic gesture that seems small at first glance. Then months later, people look back and realize they witnessed the beginning of something much bigger. But if you think the story ends with Catherine receiving responsibility over the crown jewels, think again. Because the deeper you look into this extraordinary situation, the more it begins to resemble something far larger than a simple administrative decision. It starts looking like a carefully orchestrated transition unfolding in slow motion right before the world's eyes. And perhaps the most fascinating part is that almost nobody seems willing to say it out loud. Instead, the clues are scattered everywhere. A responsibility here, a title there, a historic appearance, a symbolic gesture. Separately, they appear harmless. Together, they form a picture that is impossible to ignore. What makes this development even more explosive is the question many royal observers have quietly begun asking behind closed doors. Where does Queen Camilla fit into all of this? On paper, she remains the king's wife and the current queen. Conventional wisdom would suggest that any major responsibility involving the crown's most treasured symbols would naturally flow through her position. Yet the spotlight appears to be moving elsewhere, toward Catherine, toward William, toward the next generation. That reality alone has fueled endless speculation throughout royal circles, not because it confirms any conflict, but because it highlights where the monarchy appears to be placing its future investment. The institution seems focused not on the present reign, but on what comes after it, and that future appears to revolve around Catherine more than ever before. Her influence has expanded dramatically over recent years. Wherever she appears, headlines, whatever she wears becomes international news. Every gesture is analyzed. Every appearance becomes a statement. She has evolved from a future queen into something closer to a symbol of continuity itself. That transformation did not happen accidentally. It happened through years of discipline, patience, public scrutiny, and personal hardship. Some royal commentators believe that is precisely why she was chosen for such trust. The monarchy survives through perception as much as protocol. It survives because people believe in its continuity. They believe the institution will endure regardless of personal challenges, scandals, health concerns, or political change. And right now, Catherine may represent that continuity more effectively than anyone else inside the royal family. Which brings us back to Charles, because every road in this story eventually leads back to one unavoidable reality. Time. For decades, Charles waited to become king, longer than any heir in British history. He spent his entire life preparing for the role. Then finally, after 70 years of waiting, he inherited the crown. Yet almost immediately, unforeseen health challenges began casting shadows over what should have been the defining chapter of his reign. No matter how optimistic palace statements may sound, no matter how positive public appearances may appear, the king understands something better than anyone else. Monarchies survive because they prepare before circumstances force them to. That may explain the urgency some observers believe they are seeing. Not panic. Preparation, not surrender. Protection, every decision seems designed to strengthen the institution against uncertainty. Every responsibility transferred appears intended to eliminate confusion. Every symbolic move reinforces the same message. The monarchy must continue regardless of what happens next. And if that interpretation is correct, then the crown jewel story is not really about jewels at all. It is about succession. It is about legacy. It is about a monarch ensuring that everything he spent a lifetime preparing for remains secure long after his own chapter ends. History teaches us that the most important royal transitions often begin quietly. No dramatic announcement, no emergency broadcast, just a series of decisions that only make sense when viewed together months or years later. By the time the public realizes what was happening, the transition is already complete. That possibility is what makes this moment so fascinating. Perhaps years from now, historians will look back and identify this period as the moment the future truly shifted. The moment Catherine moved beyond being merely the Princess of Wales and became the central figure around which the next era of monarchy was built. The moment Charles began securing the future with a determination that reflected both his sense of duty and his awareness of time. For now, the palace remains largely silent. The king continues carrying out his duties. Catherine continues stepping into larger roles. William continues appearing ever closer to the responsibilities of a reigning monarch. And the questions continue growing louder. Is this simply responsible planning? Or are we witnessing the early stages of the most significant royal transition in generations? One thing is certain. The pieces are moving. The signals are becoming harder to ignore. And somewhere behind the ancient walls of the monarchy, decisions are being made that could shape the future of the crown for decades to come.